would never want to be unhelpful in any way. And I think that given the circumstances, the best way I can help now is if I step aside and let government get back to governing. And therefore, that's what I'll do, because I work for you.
Tonight, a shocking fall from grace in American politics. 1 week after a state investigation found New York Governor Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed 11 women, today the governor opting to step down. The governor's decade-long run at the helm of one of America's largest states ends in disgrace. He will officially resign in 14 days and will be replaced by the state's lieutenant governor. Kathy Hochul will become the first woman to run New York State. Tonight, the CDC is seriously weighing booster shots for vulnerable Americans as the hospitalizations are rising among the vaccinated. And we're learning tonight at least 1 million Americans have already gotten an unauthorized booster shot. The major news in Washington tonight, after literally decades of talk, a bipartisan infrastructure bill has finally passed in the Senate. But tonight, Democrats in the House are not committing to anything yet. What might hold up this compromise? Tonight, so-called forever chemicals in America's drinking water, a months-long ABC News Prime investigation, why scientists call the unregulated chemicals a ticking time bomb, what you need to know about potential risks to your health.
We're walking on top of a huge reservoir of PFAS. You can't see it, but it's right beneath us. Yeah.
The tornado outbreak tonight in the Midwest, more than a dozen twisters. And tonight, the community is facing more severe weather. And we are tracking a tropical threat gaining strength in the tropics. Our Rob Marciano times it all out. And are you interested in getting paid thousands of dollars to move? Beautiful West Virginia is calling, while you just might want to consider relocating.
It's just a simpler, slower life, and the cost of living is, like, incredible. Great people, great atmosphere. We're right near the lake.
All sounds enticing. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Reaction still coming in tonight after Governor Cuomo's resignation announcement, 1 week after a state report concluded that he had sexually harassed 11 women. Some striking words from one of his accusers today, saying this will make it safer for other women to report their own harassment and abuse. The embattled governor will officially resign in 14 days. In a statement to the media today, Cuomo denied that he ever touched anyone in an inappropriate sexual way, but at the same time, he did apologize for some of his actions. His former executive assistant has filed a criminal complaint accusing him of groping her at the governor's mansion, which he also denies. One of the nation's largest states is now set to be led by its first female governor, Kathy Hochul, a moderate Democrat. In a statement today, she said, quote, "I agree with Governor Cuomo's decision to step down. I am prepared to lead as New York State's 57th governor." Our Ariel Reshef leads us off tonight.
Tonight, the stunning downfall of New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who today revealed he will resign from office after that blistering report from the state attorney general and the 11 women who accuse him of sexual harassment and misconduct.
I think that given the circumstances, the best way I can help now is if I step aside and let government get back to governing. And therefore, that's what I'll do.
Cuomo resigning amid an intensifying impeachment probe in the New York State legislature and resounding calls from top Democrats, from President Biden to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, to step down.
Wasting energy on distractions is the last thing that state government should be doing. And I cannot be the cause of that.
Today, Cuomo denied claims of sexual harassment, but apologized to those women.
There is a difference between alleged improper conduct and concluding sexual harassment. Now, don't get me wrong. This is not to say that there are not 11 women who I truly offended. There are. And for that, I deeply, deeply apologize. I take full responsibility for my actions. I have been too familiar with people. In my mind, I've never crossed the line with anyone. But I didn't realize the extent to which the line has been redrawn.
Then talking about his own daughters.
I want them to know from the bottom of my heart that I never did and I never would intentionally disrespect a woman or treat any woman differently than I would want them treated. And that is the God's honest truth. Your dad made mistakes, and he apologized, and he learned from it.
One of them with him as he left New York City following the announcement. But even with his resignation, the embattled governor could now face potential misdemeanor charges in Albany, stemming from a criminal complaint filed by his former executive assistant, Brittany Camiso.
He put his hand up my blouse and cupped my breast over my bra.
His legal team today disputing her account.
The report got key facts wrong. It omitted key evidence, and it failed to include witnesses whose testimony did not support the narrative that was clear that this investigation was going to weave from day one.
Tonight, his accusers reacting to his resignation. Lindsey Boylan, the first to go public with her claims, tweeting, "I am thankful for the Attorney General, the investigators, and all those who have pursued the truth despite intimidation and threats of retaliation." And the president today asked about the governor's decision.
What is your reaction to Governor Cuomo's his announcement that he's stepping down? You called on him to resign. Did you think he would?
I respect the governor's decision, and I respect the decision he made.
The president then asked how he would describe the governor's 10 years in office.
In terms of his personal behavior or what he's done as a governor?
What he's done as a governor.
Thought he's done a hell of a job. And I mean, both on everything from access to voting to infrastructure, the whole range of things. That's why it's so sad.
President Biden weighing in on the matter. Ariel Reshef joins us once again from Albany. Ariel, the White House press secretary, we saw her attempting to clarify those remarks from the president after the fact. What did she have to say?
Well, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki is already backtracking on the president's comments, saying that he was responding specifically to a question about infrastructure. She says that Biden has also made it clear that it was the right decision for Cuomo to resign. She said she reiterated that Biden's position has been support for these women who have come forward, and also made it clear that you can't separate personal conduct from your business environment. Lindsay?
We know that the governor isn't planning on stepping down for 14 days, and some are asking why wait?
Yeah, well, Governor Cuomo says he wants this transition to be as seamless as possible. Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul says she is ready to lead. The former Congresswoman from Buffalo will make history, becoming the first female governor of the state of New York. Lindsay?
Ariel Reshef, our thanks to you. Now to the latest on the pandemic and the COVID surge caused by the Delta variant. Pediatric COVID cases are now soaring just as children prepare to go back to school. And the debate over requiring masks for students and teachers rages on. Nationwide, many hospitals are near the breaking point, with more than 8,000 new COVID patients now hospitalized every day. And the latest CDC forecast shows that that number could nearly quadruple by Labor Day. ABC's Victor Oquendo is in Florida tracking it all for us.
Across Florida, the debate raging over masks in schools as thousands of children today started a new year in districts where masks are not required.
We have elementary kids who are not eligible for the vaccination coming into our classrooms, possibly exposing us to COVID. We're in a national, and may I add, deadly pandemic, and the governor is playing politics.
There are more children hospitalized with confirmed COVID cases in Florida than any other state, but the governor has banned mask mandates in schools, even threatening to withhold pay of school boards that require masks. But a handful of Florida school districts are defying the governor's order and requiring masks anyway.
You think your best move right now is keeping the mask on?
Wear your mask, whether you're vaccinated or not.
It's happening in Texas, too, where the state's biggest school districts in Austin and Dallas are challenging their governor's ban on mask mandates. The superintendent in Dallas says he is willing to face a fine.
There are consequences for whatever actions you take, and I'd rather take that consequence than have the health of students and staff and families on my mind.
This week, the country's largest teachers union said it will back vaccine mandates for teachers, something Dr. Anthony Fauci supports.
I'm going to upset some people on this, but I think we should. I mean, we are in a critical situation now We've had 615,000 plus deaths, and we are in a major surge now as we're going into the fall, into the school season. This is very serious business.
And the concern for the young only growing. After falling for months, the number of children being hospitalized with COVID spiking to its highest point on record. In St. Petersburg, Florida, Serena Solomon's 7-year-old son Bryce was supposed to start second grade tomorrow, but he started feeling feverish and was rushed to the ER. He's now in isolation with COVID.
I feel like masks should be mandated in the schools because the kids are catching it as quick and as rapidly as adults.
Tonight, a new projection from the CDC shows the number of COVID patients flowing into hospitals could soar as high as 33,000 a day by early September. Hospitals under siege, Austin has just 2 ICU beds for more than 2 million people. And critics pointing out an irony. While Governor Abbott is looking for help from other states, he is still sticking to his ban on mask mandates. And at Memorial Hermann Southwest in Houston, ICU nurse Jennifer Steenberg and her staff pushed to their limit.
I feel like we've lost this fight. And my nurses feel the same way. We are at the end. There's despair, there's trauma, there's anger, there's frustration. They're putting their lives on the line to fight COVID. What is everybody else doing?
Victor joins us now from Howard Middle School in Orange County, Florida. And Victor, there's been so much controversy surrounding masks in Florida schools. What's happening at the school where you are?
Lindsay, here at this school and at all schools here in Orange County, masks are required. However, there is an opt-out policy, basically saying that parents can decide whether or not they want their child to wear a mask, and they send them to school with a note. Here in Florida, it is different, almost school district by school district. The governor seems to be somewhat okay with this policy, as he is coming down much harder on at least 2 counties that are insisting and sticking to their guns and enforcing mask mandates there. Lindsay?
Victor Oquendo, our thanks to you. For more on this, I'm joined now by Dr. Desmar Walks from Austin Travis County Health Authority. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor.
Hi, thank you.
So first, just give us a sense of how dire the situation is right now in your county's hospitals and whether your hospitals have enough resources to get by if you do run out of ICU beds.
We are continuing to have a surge in cases here, and our ICU bed capacity has been strained. We now have 6 beds available in our ICU as we have patients moved out, but we're continuing to have a surge in cases. And our hospitals are experiencing this all over the Central Texas region.
And we've been seeing a troubling uptick in COVID cases among younger patients as the Delta variant spreads. What are you seeing there as far as pediatric patients?
At present, we have a number of pediatric patients in hospital, 12 at last count, with 4 in ICU and 3 on ventilators, and that's a big concern for us.
And largely, are these children who had underlying conditions, or they were otherwise healthy kids that are coming in?
The children that are in ICU are the children that tend to be those with underlying conditions. The children that are presenting to hospital are largely unvaccinated.
And I know that health officials try to stay out of politics most of the time, but I do want to ask you about prevention and the battle over mask mandates. How much does it complicate your job when political leaders block efforts like requiring masks at school?
It means that we have to do a really good job educating the public about the stopping the spread with mask wearing, and really make a concerted effort to communicate effectively to the public and overcome the misinformation that's out there.
What's the morale like for you among doctors and nurses, your colleagues, as this now 4th wave of COVID driven by the Delta variant surges in your state?
For many of us, it's frustrating that we're here again, and that so many people have decided not to be vaccinated, and we're continually trying to educate them to be vaccinated.
The majority of people in hospitals right now with severe COVID cases have been unvaccinated. As a health professional, how frustrating is it for you to see that with vaccines widely available? And have you started seeing that trend? People are saying that in several states that they're starting to see an increase in those cases among the vaccinated.
We are continuing our efforts to get vaccine out into our community, and interestingly enough, the numbers of those that are coming in for first doses has increased as they see that we're struggling right now with our ICU capacity. So that's a good thing.
All right, Dr. Desmar Walks from the Austin Travis County Health Authority. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.
We turn now to Washington, and a big victory for President Biden as the Senate has finally passed his $1 trillion infrastructure bill. The president thanking the 19 Republicans who voted with Democrats to back the bill in a rare show of bipartisanship. But the plan still faces a battle to get through the House. Here's ABC's Rachel Scott.
Tonight at the White House, President Biden touting a rare bipartisan deal after the Senate passed his $1.1 trillion infrastructure package.
I want to thank a group of senators, Democrats and Republicans, for doing what they told me they would do. After years and years of infrastructure week, we're on the cusp of an infrastructure decade that I truly believe will transform America.
The president says this bill will create millions of jobs.
Experts believe the majority of the bill's benefits will flow to working families. Faster commutes, cleaner water, less expense, available and affordable internet. These are the things that working families need.
The plan includes $550 billion in new spending, $110 billion for highways, bridges and repairs, $65 billion to expand broadband internet, and $39 billion on public transit. And the president saying he is keeping his promise of no new taxes on the middle class.
We will not raise taxes by 1 cent on people making less than $400,000 a year.
In a 50-50 Senate, today Vice President Kamala Harris presiding over that key vote.
The yeas are 69, the nays are 30. The bill as amended is passed.
19 Republicans voting with Democrats, including Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Both sides calling the investment long overdue.
We've been talking about infrastructure here for 5 or 10 years. I'm hoping we can make it reality.
The bill could face a bumpy road in the House, where some Democrats say they won't pass it unless the other part of Biden's agenda, a $3.5 trillion spending package, including health care, education, and child care, is passed too.
Can you get moderates in your own party behind that price tag?
Well, I'm confident that we will be able to do that.
Would you be willing to come down at all?
I think right now we're at 3.5. I think that's where we're going to stay.
Rachel Scott joins us now from Capitol Hill. And Rachel, Senator Bernie Sanders, they're expressing some confidence. What's the White House saying tonight about the likelihood that they can get both of these bills to President Biden's desk? And what's the timeline for this to move forward?
Well, Lindsay, the White House tonight is optimistic. The president was asked about the challenges that these measures face. He says that he is confident that his party can get this done. The White House press secretary says the president will be working the phones, reaching out to Democrats directly to try and get these two measures across the finish line. But the reality is this could take months before both of those bills land on his desk, Lindsay.
And this could come down to those two opposite sides of the Democratic Party. Of course, the moderates in the Senate and the progressives in the House. What are those two sides saying about being able to agree on a final budget bill?
Yeah, polar opposites here. You have one side, the progressive Democrats saying, go big, be bold. You have the moderates saying, bring it in. We're going too big on this one. So this matters, of course, because in the Senate, it's a 50-50 split. And over in the House, Democrats can only afford to lose 3 votes. And so progressive Democrats tonight, they sent a letter to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. They once again are demanding that Democrats pass that much larger bill, the $3.5 trillion package with a long list of Democratic priorities first before they even take up this bipartisan infrastructure package. The only issue is that also has to clear the Senate, and moderates have made it clear that that $3.5 trillion price tag is just way too high, Lindsay, so they're going to have to reach some common ground here.
Feels like Groundhog's Day all over again. Rachel Scott, our thanks to you.
Thanks.
Tonight in Greece, the devastating infernos continue to force firefighters to make some difficult decisions. Residents and firemen tell ABC News they have been building human shields to try to contain the flames. Our Maggie Rulli is in Greece again for us tonight. Good evening, Maggie.
Hey, Lindsay. Yeah, here in Evia, people are still really living in the thick of these historic fires. This is normally a popular beach town, but you can just see there is still this thick smoke hanging in the air. We have been smelling fire and char all day long. It has been like this for more than a week. Evia has really been at the center of this wildfire crisis. We saw more than 2,000 people have already fled this island. There are still boats on standby, ready to evacuate more if needed. But, you know, Lindsay, we've also met so many people who have stayed behind, saying they want to stay back here, volunteer if needed, protect their homes if needed, even standing side by side with firefighters if needed to protect their villages and their homes and their families. You know, we met this one man today, this man Theodore, and he told us he owns this company that makes large equipment, and he makes actually these multi-purpose tanks. He told us he's been coordinating with the fire department to bring those tanks places that regular cars can't go, bringing his team onto the front lines to help put out these fires. I mean, Lindsay, just these incredible stories of people risking their lives and their livelihoods to help their neighbors. But with these incredible stories, Lindsay, we're also feeling a lot of anger here in Greece. Many people asking why the government hasn't done more, saying that they feel forgotten. You know, just yesterday we heard from the Prime Minister apologizing. He said, yes, climate change is to blame for this crisis, but he also acknowledged weaknesses in their response. And Lindsay, just today, one of the top officials of that response has resigned as well. Clearly, this anger is going to last. There'll be a lot of questions going forward. Lindsay?
Mounting frustration there in Greece. Maggie, thanks so much. Here in the U.S., we are tracking heat waves and severe weather across the country. More than a dozen tornadoes in Illinois just in the last 24 hours. And we're also watching a tropical threat gaining strength in the Caribbean. Our Rob Marciano is tracking it all for us. Hey, Rob.
Hi, Lindsay. The same area that got those tornadoes last night is getting hit again tonight with severe weather. Northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin under the gun right now. Severe thunderstorm watches are posted. We've got warnings up. Rockford, Madison getting it. Milwaukee, Chicago next. Mostly damaging wind. We've already had 6 reports of damaging storm reports, and that includes some areas in the D.C., Philly, and New Jersey area. You see some action there. This is fed in part by the heat that's building across the midsection of the country. Another day tomorrow of excessive heat warnings and heat advisories up from St. Louis, 109. That's what it's going to feel like with the humidity, 106 in Tulsa. And then look at the Northwest, which just got off its record-breaking and deadly heat wave just 5 or 6 weeks ago. It's now back in it, and that's going to last at least through the rest of this week. And now a heat wave building as well in the Northeast from Philly to New York to Boston. All right, here's what's going on in the tropics. This thing still hasn't been named yet. It's just a potential tropical cyclone. Hurricane Hunter's been in and out of there. It's just to the southeast of Puerto Rico right now where a tropical storm warning is posted. If they find it to have a closed circulation, its tropical storm name would be Fred, but it will be going across Hispaniola, then getting into some dry air, and then Cuba is going to limit its intensification as well. So we think it'll get to southern Florida by Friday as a very weak storm, but if it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, and that's the current forecast, that will allow it to strengthen. And I think anyone from New Orleans to Tampa Bay to Fort Myers is going to have to be worried about this and certainly prepare for this storm as it heads towards the U.S. this weekend. Lindsay will be tracking it all weekend long for sure. Back over to you.
All right. Sounds good, Rob. Thanks so much.
You bet.
And when we come back, police defend the reason that a black real estate agent was put in handcuffs during a showing. The new consumer warning to those families who may receive a child tax credit. But up next, the month-long investigation into cleaning water, why a group of potentially toxic chemicals are being detected, and what can be done about it. Stay with us.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live.
This Wednesday night on ABC, the event special. Superstar Whitney Houston. It's a side of Whitney you have not yet seen.
I can tell you that I'm not a person who wants to die. I'm not the strongest every day, but I'm not the weakest either. And I won't break.
superstar Whitney Houston.
You think it's easy being a superstar? You have no idea.
Wednesday at 10/9 Central on ABC and streaming on Hulu.
Friday, August 20th. Don't miss Lord. GMA's first concert in the park this summer. Friday, August 20th on GMA. Sponsored by Caesars Rewards. Right now, with so much at stake, thank you for making ABC's This Week with George the #1 Sunday morning news show versus the competition.
Welcome to This Week.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source. What happens when Anna Nicole Smith's family goes in search of her secrets, past, and possessions?
You don't own me, I'm not your property.
And
when the autopsy is released, it is shocking.
The 2020 event, Friday night on ABC. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people
Squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back, everyone. Clean and safe drinking water is a basic necessity that we can easily take for granted in this country. But now a group of unregulated, potentially toxic chemicals, part of American life for decades, they are being increasingly detected in the water of thousands of American communities. Tonight, what our investigation uncovered and what you can do to keep your family safe. Here's Devin Dwyer.
In the parched desert community of Tucson, Arizona, a precious natural resource is under threat.
This is what we call the inflow into the plant.
Water from the city's underground aquifer can pulse through these pipes at 10,000 gallons a minute, filtered, purified, and sent to taps in thousands of homes and businesses. But this spring, the city abruptly shut the plant down.
We know that there's this contamination out there. We don't know exactly what it does, but we know it's not going away.
Tests detected elevated levels of man-made chemicals known as per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS. They're colorless, tasteless, and scientists say potentially dangerous to human health over time.
You lost confidence that these filters could take it out and guarantee the water's safe.
We don't have enough confidence to go to drinking water supply at this time using just granular activated carbon.
The indefinite shutdown turned off a source of drinking water for 60,000 residents, raising concerns about safety.
You know, there's so many memories growing up here.
Patty Daggett's old neighborhood on the city's south side is still scarred by tap water poisoned in the 1980s by an industrial spill of the chemical solvent trichloroethylene, or TCE. Daggett swam in the contaminated water as a child and drank from the tap in her home. In 2014, at age 47, she was diagnosed with a rare form of blood cancer, her doctor linked to the chemicals.
He said that he had, through that cytogenic test, determined that my cancer had been caused by a toxin. I'm telling you right now, I would never let any of my kids, my grandkids, anybody in my family drink water in the faucet anymore.
The TCE pollution, which went undetected for years, is linked to cancer cases and deaths across South Tucson. Hundreds of residents, including Daggett, received financial settlements and major lawsuits. In 1983, the EPA listed Tucson as a Superfund site, where cleanup of the water has been underway until now.
This water treatment facility was designed to filter out 2 other toxic chemicals, but when PFAS arrived, city officials decided to shut it down.
Mayor Regina Romero says a stream of PFAS-contaminated groundwater more than 143 times above the suggested EPA safety level threatened to overwhelm the city's drinking water filters and resurfaced old fears.
We still have many families that lost loved ones because of TCE. And so it is palpable, it is present.
How dangerous is PFAS in your view? Is it as concerning as
It is as
TCE?
concerning. It is as concerning.
The Environmental Protection Agency does not require testing for PFAS and does not enforce a national standard for the maximum amount that's safe to drink. But in 2016, concerned by emerging data on adverse health effects, the EPA issued an advisory to local water systems, saying PFAS exposure over 70 parts per trillion may result in liver damage, weakened immune systems, and cancer.
The ones that are most strongly linked are kidney and testicular cancer. They can also have effects on developing babies and on women while they're pregnant.
Dr. Jamie DeWitt is a toxicologist and pharmacologist leading cutting-edge research on how PFAS affects the human body over prolonged exposure.
For those people who have PFAS in their bodies, there's not really anything that they can do to force them out of their bodies more rapidly. We don't have any drugs that will make you pee out PFAS really quickly. So if you're watching this and you're concerned about PFAS, you have to educate yourself. Where do you get your water, and what do you know about what's in your water?
Scientists with the Environmental Working Group in Washington have detected some amount of PFAS in groundwater or drinking water in nearly 2,800 American communities across 49 states. The contamination, often linked to nearby industrial sites, landfills, airports, and military bases where the chemicals may have seeped into the ground.
We're walking on top of a huge reservoir of PFAS. You can't see it, but it's right beneath us.
Yeah, it's very...
University of Arizona hydrologist Bo Gua walked us through where scientists suspect some of Tucson's PFAS contamination began. He says the heat-resistant chemicals never break down, calling them forever chemicals that leave a traceable trail through the soil.
You call this a ticking time bomb of a problem.
Yeah, they basically fulfill the characteristics of a ticking time bomb, right? It's very dangerous, and they're migrating very slowly.
State and local officials believe firefighting foam laden with the chemicals permeated soil around Tucson's airport and Air National Guard facility decades ago, only now reaching groundwater wells miles away.
The firefighting foam, they have told us that they either, if it was used on the runway, they'd hose the stuff into the soil. If it was used in the hangars, they'd dilute it and dump it down the sewer system.
Councilman Steve Kozacek has been pressing the military to expedite cleanup and remediation, especially as climate change fuels historic drought.
We're in the desert. By the way, we're in a 12-year drought in the city of Tucson right now. So there will come a time when the Colorado River water is no longer available, and we're going to be reliant on our groundwater.
This map from the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality shows PFAS concentrations in groundwater around 10,000 parts per trillion, far above the EPA's 70 parts per trillion advisory, stretching from the airport to wells that deliver water to the treatment plant.
Tucson's Air National Guard's base is one of the largest F-16 training facilities in the world. It's also one of 650 military installations linked to PFAS contamination.
The Defense Department says it's investigating the scope of known or suspected contamination at or near hundreds of facilities, but needs more time before it can launch a large-scale cleanup plan. 5 years ago, the military began deploying what it calls a new environmentally responsible firefighting foam, but it's not PFAS-free.
Tucson's a bellwether. We're the canary in the coal mine right now. We're saying to every other city in the country, this is an issue if you've got a military base in your community.
PFAS contamination linked to firefighting foams has been detected on the lake shores in northern Michigan and neighborhoods near an old Naval Air Station in Pennsylvania. In New Mexico, a dairy farmer claims in a federal lawsuit that groundwater contaminated by PFAS poisoned his cows. And in March, after a foam spill at this small Virginia airport, PFAS was discovered in the water system of suburbs of the nation's capital.
So it's all over this area, and it's in the backyards of people who are working on these issues.
Water quality analyst Sydney Evans estimates more than 200 million Americans could be drinking some amount of PFAS in their tap water every day.
It's not just localized issues of contamination, but these are issues in big metropolitan areas as well, and that there's still not any testing requirements at the national level.
The EPA declined our request for an interview, but told us in a statement that addressing PFAS in drinking water is a top priority and that it's developing a multi-year strategy to deliver critical public health protections. The agency says it's moving quickly while balancing the law, industry interests, and the science. Consumer advocates say EPA's delay in regulating the chemicals is highly troubling.
I think that the EPA, we need to hold their feet to the fire, because nothing is going to change. Nothing will go forward until they set those limits.
Yolanda Herrera has been advocating for safer drinking water for decades. She says she believes the city of Tucson's assurances that its water is safe and PFAS-free, but says Americans nationwide need to pay attention.
They can't just depend on their neighborhood leader or their mayor to make this change. It's going to take all of us together to go to Congress, to go to the EPA, to make the major changes that need to be done.
Congress has started to take action. In a bipartisan vote last month, the House approved a bill that would force EPA to declare PFAS hazardous and establish a national drinking water limit, requiring water systems to start filtering it out. The Senate's bipartisan infrastructure deal includes billions to help communities get the job done.
The residents of our community should not be left holding the bag of something that they did not create.
In South Tucson, Patty Daggett, whose cancer is in remission, worries now about her aging mother, Natalie, still living in the family's Southside home, still washing in the water, but not drinking it.
I wish I could tell you how worried I am, because, you know, my mom's been affected, I've been affected, her mom's been affected. All of these families in this neighborhood have been affected.
You're supposed to trust the water company, you know? I mean...
Do you trust them today? Do you think they fixed it?
No, I won't even give my dog... I give my dog bottled water. We don't know who to trust.
Devin joins us now. So, Devin, how can you check to see if there's any amount of PFAS in your tap water? And is any level safe to drink? What does the science tell us?
Yeah, Lindsay, many local water companies actually voluntarily test for PFAS. So experts told us you can start there, check their results, which are often published online, ask those questions. As for safety, many of the medical experts we talked to said actually no level of PFAS is ideal to consume, although it's really prevalent in our environment. Sometimes it's hard to avoid. The EPA advisory suggests over a lifetime we shouldn't be consuming more than 70 parts per trillion. But again, because that testing is not required, it's really hard to tell what is coming out of your tap when it comes to PFAS.
And you also mentioned just how prevalent these chemicals are. They're not just found in firefighting foam.
That's right. PFAS are ubiquitous, Lindsay. They're in all aspects of our life. There are more than 4,000 different types of these chemicals. They coat our nonstick pans, our waterproof jackets, our stain-proof furniture. Manufacturers for years have said these chemicals are indispensable to our lives. They say they're inherently safe, aside from a few outliers which have been banned. But the biggest worry right now from consumer advocates, Lindsay, is the amount of these chemicals showing up in our water. And I expect we'll be hearing much more soon from the EPA on this, especially with the growing pressure from Congress and consumers demanding more safeguards. Lindsay?
Yeah, I imagine a lot of people are going to be concerned by this. Devin Dwyer, our thanks to you.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Still ahead here on Prime, hundreds forced to evacuate a building in South Florida with so many structures there under scrutiny after that deadly building collapse. And who is fueling the population growth in America? We take a look by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day. Actress Christina Applegate with a deeply personal revelation, tweeting to the world that she is battling multiple sclerosis. Our thoughts are certainly with her tonight.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Hug you. Yeah. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people
squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
24 hours, assault on the Capitol. The ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu. Now streaming. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir. America's #1 most watched newscast. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
Welcome back, everyone. The Washington Post reports that census data set to be released this week will likely show that all population growth in the U.S. in the past decade is being driven by minorities as the white population declines. We take a look by the numbers. For the past 5 years, U.S. Census Bureau annual updates have estimated that the population of white Americans is shrinking. That's expected to be confirmed when the first racial breakdowns from the 2020 census are reported this week, marking the first time in the U.S. Census that the white population will show a decline. That comes about 8 years earlier than expected, according to a demographer from the Brookings Institute who told the Washington Post that the opioid epidemic and lowering birth rates after the Great Recession contributed to the white population decline. And for the first time, the portion of white Americans could drop below 60% of the total population. And it's expected that for the first time, the majority of the population under the age of 18, the majority will be people of color as the nation moves closer to minority status in the coming decades. Hispanics are now estimated to make up nearly 20% of the population. And as the fastest growing group, they're believed to account for half of the nation's growth since 2010. According to 2020 Census state population data released in April, the U.S. grew by 7.4% in the past 10 years. That's slower than any decade besides the 1930s and the Great Depression. The U.S. Census data will be critical for shaping the political landscape for the next 10 years, as who lives where will help local and state governments draw political districts for the next decade. And we still have lots to get to here on Prime tonight. The states like West Virginia now offering incentives if you move there to work remotely. And how much do you think this skinny house is on the market for? But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
World News Now.
And America This Morning.
The best new video.
The breaking news overnight.
Emergency crews called to the town of Surfside.
U.S. airstrikes hitting targets in Iraq and Syria.
The stories people are talking about.
You don't want to shave your legs? Don't. I was going to say.
Oh my. Got it.
And what to expect in the day ahead.
ABC World News Now and America This Morning.
Starting at 2 a.m. Eastern.
Up all night to keep you up to date.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source.
This is GMA3, what you need to know. GMA3.
A third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon.
It's all about you. Lunchtime on ABC.
What happens when Anna Nicole Smith's family goes in search of her secrets, past and possessions?
You don't own me, I'm not your property.
And
when the autopsy is released, it is shocking.
The 2020 event, Friday night on ABC.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
After serving nearly 3 terms as the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo is out.
The best way I can help now is if I step aside and let government get back to governing.
Many speculated the governor would fight until the end, but he's officially stepping aside in exactly 14 days, saying he doesn't want to be a distraction after the state attorney general's report concluded that the governor sexually harassed 11 women.
Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul will become the state's 57th governor and first woman to hold the post.
Hospitals across the country are running short of beds and nursing staff as the coronavirus roars back in the United States. Florida, Arkansas, and Louisiana all have more people hospitalized with COVID-19 than any other point in the pandemic. With Florida Governor Ron DeSantis threatening to withhold money from his state's schools that require wearing a mask, the White House is looking into paying those teachers directly.
The American Rescue Plan funds that were distributed to Florida to provide assistance to schools have not yet been distributed, and those can be used to cover expenses that come up in this period of time. They're federal funds.
But despite the threat, a vote of defiance for the second most populous county in Florida, Broward County's school board voting 8-1 in favor of keeping their mask requirement for students and staff.
So far, Governor DeSantis hasn't carried through on his threat to withhold school money for mask mandates.
Police near Grand Rapids, Michigan are defending their actions after placing a black real estate agent and his client who was touring a house in handcuffs.
Anyone inside? Come on, your hands in the air, do it now!
Police responded to a call from a concerned neighbor. After complying with the officer's commands, Eric Brown, the realtor, was handcuffed as he was questioned.
Neighbors are calling in that you guys are breaking into the place. I'm the realtor. Okay, here you go.
His client, Roy Thorne, had brought his 15-year-old son, who was also handcuffed.
This is likely going to be a big misunderstanding. This house got broken into a few days ago.
Police say another man driving a car similar to the real estate agent's was recently arrested for entering the house without permission, and that raised a neighbor's suspicions. After demonstrating how his realtor key works, police uncuffed Brown and his client and apologized.
Sorry for the inconvenience. You gotta do what you gotta do.
Authorities evacuated an 8-story condo building in Miami because of concerns about structural safety. It comes a little more than a month after the deadly collapse in Surfside. That collapse killed 98 people. Several other buildings in the area have since been evacuated over structural concerns. The most recent evacuated building was put on notice last week for several violations, including failure to obtain a 40-year recertification. After a year of coronavirus restrictions, casinos nationwide had their best second quarter in history, taking in $13.6 billion. Almost $25 billion have been won during the first 6 months of this year. Sports betting and online gambling helped keep casino revenue alive during pandemic shutdowns. Right now, in-person gambling is fueling the industry's recovery this year. Experts say casinos remain open without capacity restrictions restrictions in all 25 states that currently have commercial casinos.
Tucked away in the crowd of bricks on Hull Street, the narrowest of homes.
Welcome to the skinny house.
So skinny, in fact, a single file walk required to navigate through.
The backyard's almost larger than the house itself.
The twists and turns of this 5-story single-family home have a unique history.
2 brothers inherited land from their father. When one was away fighting in the Civil War, the other brother built a large house behind this house. He built this house despite his brother to block out his light and to block out the view.
Born out of historical spite turned into modern spectacular. Just a bit of caution to squeeze into this tour of a fascinating space.
Oh, yeah.
Watch your head.
Welcome back. Next to the consumer warning for families eligible to receive that new child tax credit payment, the IRS is now alerting parents that they could be the target of a new scam. Rebecca Jarvis has those details.
A text message with a link to apply for the child tax credit, an email asking to click and claim your economic stimulus payment. These are fake. According to the IRS, cyber criminals actively trying to scam entitled families out of this money.
We're seeing scammers trying to take advantage of the American public by attempting to gain information using phone calls, emails, text messages, through social media.
The Better Business Bureau also with an alert. Child tax credits are coming, and so are the scammers. And cybersecurity firm Domain Tools reporting it's found nearly 50 sites pretending to be part of the government's American Rescue Plan, which includes the child tax credit.
If you were searching for, American Relief Plan, you may come across one of these sites.
Domain Tools saying while many of the sites have since been taken down, these are still active, all with a similar design and all not ending in .gov, a major red flag.
These sites will siphon off the identity information.
The site's asking for your social security number and driver's license or state ID number to apply.
And they'll be able to steal someone's refund check and also, log into any sort of bank account information.
GMA tried contacting the sites. For each, either no response or we couldn't get through to reach a person. The IRS stating it does not contact taxpayers via email, text message, or social media platforms to request personal or financial information for verification or any information related to the child tax credit.
Those that are eligible for the advanced child tax credit, the IRS is going to use the information from their 2019 and 20 tax returns to automatically enroll them for these advanced payments. So taxpayers don't need to take any additional action.
Our thanks to Rebecca for that. Our next story, you might, if you have a little flexibility in your schedule, you might find this one attractive. Working remotely, looking to relocate, a handful of states and cities continue to offer incentives in the hopes of finding new residents. And Kenneth Moten has more on one of the top destinations, West Virginia.
Tina McPherson is on the cusp of a new adventure and major life change.
Really excited. A little nervous, but really excited.
A fourth-generation Washingtonian, her roots are deep, but she is pulling them up and moving west. West Virginia, that is.
It's just a simpler, slower life, and the cost of living is, incredible. Great people, great atmosphere. We're right near the lake.
McPherson is one of nearly 8,000 people who have applied to ascend West Virginia. With the end of the pandemic in sight and the world opening up to remote workers and digital nomads, a handful of states and cities are offering incentives to sweeten the deal in hopes of finding willing city dwellers like McPherson who will pick up and move. A state with exceptional beauty but a shrinking population, Ascend West Virginia hopes to entice telecommuters to have their Zoom calls from Appalachia. The bait, $12,000 along with passes to a variety of outdoor activities for a year. That's $10,000 divided up in monthly payments for the first year and $2,000 at the end of the second, all to indulge in the state's allure.
We have been to frogs that are now really truly proud of their own pond.
The funds for the remote worker program through West Virginia University.
Welcome to wild, wonderful West Virginia.
Donated by Brad Smith, the former CEO of the software company Intuit, and his wife Elise. Smith, a Mountain State native, gifting $25 million. The state has the 6th highest poverty rate in the country at 16%, several points higher than the national average. With nearly 280,000 West Virginians living in the poorest conditions, the goal of Ascend is to dismantle generational poverty by injecting new life and money into the state, focusing on home buying, supporting local businesses, and community engagement.
It's a bold step toward making West Virginia the most attractive state in the nation.
But there are major cons the state is tackling, a dual health crisis unrelated to the COVID-19 pandemic. The state is at the epicenter of the opioid epidemic, and it has the most concerning HIV outbreak in the country, according to the CDC. The Appalachia region runs from northern Mississippi and Alabama all the way up to southern New York.
There are pros and cons of being a small town. I mean, I know everyone here, and I would definitely call that a pro.
But locals call West Virginia the heart of Appalachia.
We come from humble beginnings, and a lot of people are still in those humble beginnings, and it's all about community here, being able to lift each other up.
Community is exactly what's driving people to the Wardensville Garden Market, a social experiment and food-based nonprofit founded by Paul Yandura to elevate this little northeastern corner of the state. The program creates sustainable businesses around town, like a market, a farm, a bakery, and a glass-blowing studio.
Lots of times people feel like we found something here, but it's been here. I mean, the students, the families, the history of the town.
Yandura and his husband Donald moved away from D.C. nearly a decade ago. They were looking for the simple life. They found it and an opportunity to dust off the sleepy town, population less than 300, and give it new life. One initiative focusing on Wardenville's youth.
We knew that if we had a program that could create opportunities for youth, that we could bring something to the table.
It teaches you responsibility, and you got to get here on time. This is your job. You're supposed to work. And so it's taught me a lot of responsibility, I think. And I've seen that in myself, and it makes me like working here a lot, especially on the farm.
The Wardensville Garden Market is built around the concept that if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach him how to fish, he'll eat forever.
Food for me is the best way we can communicate across cultures. No matter who you are, where you come from, food is this catalyst for change and for growth and for understanding.
Down the road, another West Virginian is using food for change, Pupusaria Emerita. With $900 in her pocket, she moved to Moorfield with the dream of opening up a restaurant.
I liked this town. I came to this place through the church, and then I really liked it here.
The naturalized citizen from Honduras is part of a growing Hispanic community. The recent census found West Virginia is just one of 4 states that suffered a loss in population, but an increase in the Latino population.
And what makes me most glad is that people are humble. People are humble because it doesn't matter how they eat. If it's packed here, they'll just set up outside and then eat there because they really like pupusas.
Emerita bringing her recipes and her culture to these hills.
West Virginia,
As for the newest West Virginian to embark on the many twists and turns on those country roads, McPherson is excited for her new adventure.
I just think really it's the people that are drawing me to West Virginia, not just the beauty of the state, which is absolutely stunningly beautiful.
Both wild and wonderful, today's West Virginia hopes to be an incentive for those who are seeking a change of scenery. Kenneth Moten, ABC News, Washington.
Between the people, the beauty, and the money, people just might find that incentive. Our thanks to Kenneth for that. And before we go tonight, our image of the day. This is what the Olympics look like in space. While the summer games are over, at least back here on Earth, astronauts in the International Space Station have a few moves, some of them synchronized, some impressive flips and spins up there in space. Let's see how they land it. Perfect 10. That is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Coming up in the next next hour, we're staying on top of several things, including the growing frustration of frontline hospital staffers that are tired and fed up with this latest surge, especially since, unlike the prior ones, Americans can now get vaccinated. And our closer look at our history and the real story behind the Alamo. Has the truth of what happened there been distorted? Stay with us.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
What happens when Anna Nicole Smith's family goes in search of her secrets, past, and possessions?
You don't own me, I'm not your property.
And
when the autopsy is released, it is shocking.
The 2020 event, Friday night on ABC. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. Hey everyone, I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. The cleanup continues in parts of Illinois after a reported 14 tornadoes hit that state in just the last 24 hours. Our forecasters are also keeping their eye on a tropical storm system that is now making its way across the Caribbean. It may be near the Florida coastline this weekend. And overseas tonight, those unprecedented wildfires in Greece continue, some fighting the flames with hoses from their homes. This as a record-breaking heat wave from Italy to Turkey continues. And the #2 Republican in the House, Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana, received his second dose of the Pfizer vaccine earlier today. His message to his state, which is among the states with the highest number of unvaccinated residents: it's safe and effective. The staunch conservative is urging people to talk to their doctors about the shot versus reading what's online. And exactly 1 week after that damning state attorney general investigative report that accused New York Governor Andrew Cuomo of sexually harassing 11 women, he has now stepped down. Ariel Reshef is back on the story for us.
Tonight, the stunning downfall of New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who today revealed he will resign from office after that blistering report from the state attorney general and the 11 women who accuse him of sexual harassment and misconduct.
I think that given the circumstances, the best way I can help now is if I step aside and let government get back to governing. And therefore, that's what I'll do.
Cuomo resigning amid an intensifying impeachment probe in the New York State legislature and resounding calls from top Democrats, from President Biden to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, to step down.
Wasting energy on distractions is the last thing that state government should be doing. And I cannot be the cause of that.
Today, Cuomo denied claims of sexual harassment, but apologized to those women.
There is a difference between alleged improper conduct and concluding sexual harassment. Now, don't get me wrong. This is not to say that there are not 11 women who I truly offended. There are. And for that, I deeply, deeply apologize. I take full responsibility for my actions. I have been too familiar with people. In my mind, I've never crossed the line with anyone. But I didn't realize the extent to which the line has been redrawn.
Then talking about his own daughters.
I want them to know from the bottom of my heart that I never did and I never would intentionally disrespect a woman or treat any woman differently than I would want them treated. And that is the God's honest truth. Your dad made mistakes, and he apologized, and he learned from it.
One of them with him as he left New York City following the announcement. But even with his resignation, the embattled governor could now face potential misdemeanor charges in Albany, stemming from a criminal complaint filed by his former executive assistant, Brittany Camiso.
He put his hand up my blouse and cupped my breast over my bra.
His legal team today disputing her account.
The report got key facts wrong. It omitted key evidence, and it failed to include witnesses whose testimony did not support the narrative that was clear that this investigation was going to weave from day one.
Tonight, his accusers reacting to his resignation. Lindsay Boylan, the first to go public with her claims, tweeting, "I am thankful for the Attorney General, the investigators, and all those who have pursued the truth despite intimidation and threats of retaliation." And the president today asked about the governor's decision.
What is your reaction to Governor Cuomo's his announcement that he's stepping down? You called on him to resign. Did you think he would?
I respect the governor's decision, and I respect the decision he made.
The president then asked how he would describe the governor's 10 years in office.
In terms of his personal behavior or what he's done as a governor?
What he's done as a governor.
I thought he's done a hell of a job. And I mean, both on everything from access to voting to infrastructure, to a whole range of things. That's why it's so sad.
President weighing in there. Our thanks to Ariel. Now to the COVID-19 crisis. An alarming surge in cases in nearly all 50 states. 94,000 new pediatric cases reported in this country in just a week. These COVID numbers are something that we have not seen in 6 months. From the burnout on the front line to the burden on hospital systems, the frustration is clearly mounting. ABC's Morgan Norwood has more.
As the Delta variant drives up the caseload, burnout among some frontline hospital staffers is depleting the workforce. In Arizona, nurse Paulette Rangel now leaving her post.
I love them, I feel for them, and I wish that I was there to help. But ultimately, I had to take care of myself. I had to take care of my family and my mental health.
98% of our country's population is now living in a county with high or substantial community spread, triggering a steady increase in hospitalizations with more than 73,000 people receiving care, the highest number in 6 months.
The majority of the patients who've been admitted are between 10 and 13 years of age, which puts them right at or just below the age of vaccination.
As many children head back to the classrooms, the American Academy of Pediatrics urging the FDA to grant emergency use authorization of vaccines for 5 to 11-year-olds as quickly as possible. The Delta variant, experts warn, can present severe symptoms in children.
We're lucky that we were able to bring Enzo home.
7-year-old Enzo Montoya, a second grader, was hospitalized with the virus for over 2 weeks. He had to be isolated for 10 days. His parents say they thought they'd taken the right precautions by getting vaccinated, but Enzo was somehow exposed.
And it's very sad right now with COVID rising in kids. So we just want everyone to do their part, get vaccinated.
Our thanks to Morgan for that. Apparently, today is not Groundhog's Day after all, because instead of talking about the deal, the U.S. Senate has finally passed the $1.1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure package after weeks of intense negotiations and several roadblocks. 19 Republicans joined all Senate Democrats to give the final approval, but there are still obstacles before this reaches President Biden's desk. ABC's Faith Abube has more.
Majority Leader Chuck Schumer beaming on the Senate floor, saying today's passage of a $1.1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure package in the U.S. Senate was decades overdue.
When the Senate is run with an open hand rather than a closed fist, senators can accomplish big things.
Vice President Kamala Harris presiding over the vote in a significant show of bipartisanship. GOP leader Mitch McConnell and 18 other Republican senators joining all Democrats to approve the package.
The bill as amended is passed.
After years and years of infrastructure week, we're on the cusp of an infrastructure decade. that I truly believe will transform America.
Democrats believe the bipartisan plan is only one part of a two-track strategy for revitalizing the nation's infrastructure. The first bill includes funding for roads, bridges, public transit, and broadband. The second comes in the form of a $3.5 trillion budget resolution. That package focusing on progressive priorities like universal pre-K, free 2-year college tuition, expanding Medicaid, and addressing climate change. 96 progressive Democrats in the House already threatening to vote against the bipartisan plan unless the Senate passes a robust budget spending bill.
The two-track strategy is proceeding full steam ahead.
In the evenly split chamber, Senate Democrats plan to use a budgetary tool called reconciliation. It requires all 50 Democrats plus Vice President Kamala Harris casting the tie-breaking vote to pass.
Republicans will probably not be able to save our colleagues from themselves.
Faith, thank you. We turn now to a new battle over history spurred by a new book, Forget the Alamo, which challenges the commonly known narrative around the 1836 Battle of the Alamo in San Antonio, Texas. For decades, that battle has been portrayed in popular culture and in school textbooks as a valiant defense by some 200 men killed by an overpowering Mexican army. And even in defeat, the Alamo's defense providing the rallying cry for Texas forces that later won the state's independence. But does that narrative tell the whole story? Brian Burrow, an author and correspondent for Vanity Fair, joins us now. He's the co-author, along with Jason Stanford and Chris Tomlinson, of the new book, Forget the Alamo, which explores what they say are the misconceptions and myths around the bloody battle. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
So first, we should note that you and your co-authors grew up in Texas, so you've grown up with the story of the Alamo, including the idea that white settlers like Davy Crockett fought to the death to defend the Alamo. First, just quickly explain what context you argue has been left out of the telling of this history, including the role of slavery.
Well, when you look at the myths of the Alamo, and let's be clear, we're building our book on 20 or 30 years of new academic scholarship. The myths fall into two categories. Those about the Texas Revolt itself. And yes, we argue that the main factor, long overlooked, but now dealt with, I think, commonly in the academic literature, was the protection of slavery. Independent Texas became, as you may know, the most militant slave state pretty much in world history. And then, of course, there are the myths about the battle itself. The idea that, the heart of the myth has always been that these men made this stirring defense by choice to defend their freedom from Mexican oppression. The facts of history, however, don't support any of this, including the fact that they did any of this voluntarily. The fact is they fought at the Alamo because they got trapped, because they ignored weeks of warnings that Santa Anna's army was on its way.
And your book has faced some blowback as it comes. We see the battle in many states over the teaching of critical race theory similarly. What do you say to conservative critics who say that slavery was not the central factor in the fight over Texas independence and that the history shouldn't overemphasize its importance in the battle for the Alamo?
The legend of the Alamo is so beloved here. It's so much at the center of Texas identity that it is very hard for traditionalists to give up any of the legend that they've grown up knowing and loving. It's hard to introduce new ideas. And unfortunately, the book has become politicized by Texas politicians who think that banging on us will help them raise some money. This type of thing is to be expected. It's unfortunate. All we're trying to do, Lindsay, is recapture the Alamo of history, the actual Alamo, not the Alamo with the legend that we've all grown up loving.
And you also question the military strategy of those who defended the Alamo. But let's step back for a moment. Is that accurate that this small group of men was able to defend their position for 13 days and delay the Mexican advance, and that their deaths provided this rallying cry of remember the Alamo for Sam Houston and the Texas Army, who weeks later defeated Santa Anna's forces to win Texas independence?
Well, the part you got right was they fought, and it was a rallying cry. It was an unnecessary battle. It was one that Sam Houston himself didn't think was necessary. San Antonio had some strategic significance, but there was really no reason for it to be fought. It was an indefensible position. But you're right in that the most important thing about the Alamo was not the loss of the men, the military loss. It was how Sam Houston and the Texas Army 6 weeks later used it as a rallying cry to defeat the Mexican army at the Battle of San Jacinto, which secured Texas's independence. In that regard, the battle was tremendously important, but of little real strategic significance.
The book also outlines how efforts like John Wayne's movie in 1960 about the Alamo have fed the popular narrative about the battle, which you call the, quote, heroic Anglo narrative. So why do you believe that the fuller picture of the battle got lost over time, and was there ever pushback on that narrative?
There was very little pushback really until the 1970s. And as I say, we're incorporating all the academic work for the last 40 years. You know, up until the 50s, the Alamo was kind of a small regional Texas thing. It really wasn't until the Davy Crockett movies that Disney made in the 50s, and especially the John Wayne movie in 1960, that really enshrined the legend and made it not only a national, but an international icon. And it took so long for people to push back on this because a lot of accounts of the battle, the few that exist, were from Mexican officers. Many of them have only risen to visibility in the 20th century, and it took a while. And you know, these types of controversies have really been going on since the mid-'70s, when the first controversy arose about the Alamo's greatest mystery, which was how Davy Crockett died. For years, of course, Texans always wanted to believe that he had died as John Wayne did, famously in that movie. In fact, we now know from Mexican accounts unanimously that he surrendered and was executed.
But I'm curious also, though, that since Texas has one of the largest Mexican-American populations in the country, especially among young people, how does the way the Alamo story is taught in Texas schools impact that population?
Well, that's the most important part of this. When people say, why does any of this matter? You have to understand how this Anglo-centric narrative of Texas's birth, of the Alamo's birth, has been used to, and I don't use this word lightly, oppress generations of Latino Americans, of Tejanos, as they're often called down here. It is a painful wound. It is something that has been used against them culturally for years. And it is, you know, a lot of people talking Tejanos, especially those of a certain age, who will say you just don't know what it's like to be portrayed as the killers of Davy Crockett, that this revolt was on all Alamos against, all Anglos against all Latinos, when in fact it wasn't. The Tejanos were the most important allies that the American colonists had, and it's that type of nuance that has been utterly lost in the Anglo-centric narrative commonly taught in Texas schools, and that we're trying to recapture and reintroduce to mainstream audiences today.
Brian Burrow, co-author of Forget the Alamo, The Rise and Fall of an American Myth. Our thanks to you. The book is now out and available. And still to come, one of the world's most dangerous viruses is detected in Africa. We're not talking COVID or Ebola. More on the contact tracing that's now underway. And a major ruling in that battle to mandate vaccinations for passengers who want to take cruises that leave the state of Florida. Stay with us.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. Good Morning America, #1 in the morning, 9 years running. World News Tonight with David Muir, #1 in the evening with America's most watched newscast. 2020, the #1 news magazine on Friday nights. The View, the #1 daytime talk show. And ABC News Live, #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
What happens when Anna Nicole Smith's family goes in search of her secrets, past, and possessions?
You don't own me, I'm not your property.
And
When the autopsy is released, it is shocking.
The 2020 event, Friday night on ABC.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Hug you. Yeah. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
Are you ready?
There once was a housewife.
Erica Jane.
The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. Who married a hustler.
Tom Girardi was LA Law. So powerful.
They were just blowing money left and right. But then...
The Real Housewives star accused with her husband of staging a fake divorce.
Thomas Girardi accused of embezzlement. People love a good scandal.
The biggest question is, did she know?
The Housewife and the Hustler. Only on Hulu.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people
squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. Welcome back, everyone. We're tracking several international headlines at this hour. The number keeps on rising. Taliban fighters have now seized 8 cities in just the past 5 days. President Biden was pressed by our Stephanie Ramos today on the U.S. decision to withdraw from Afghanistan. Biden insisted he did not regret his decision and said Afghan forces have to, quote, fight for themselves. And the West African nation of Guinea has recorded the first case of a rare but highly infectious Marburg virus disease. Sadly, that first case was a fatal one. Healthcare workers in the area have now been spraying down the areas where the person may have been, and dozens are in quarantine due to the Ebola-like virus. And soccer legend Lionel Messi is now a member of the French soccer club PSG, the Parisian team taking the highly coveted player after Barcelona, where Messi played his entire career, could not afford to keep him. Today, a sad day in Spain. Messi's image was removed from a mural in front of the stadium. And back to COVID now for a moment. The battle over vaccine mandates in cruise ships continues. A federal judge has ruled in favor of Norwegian Cruise Line, allowing them to require proof of vaccination for everyone on board. So if you're planning on taking a trip, where do things stand? Gio Benitez has more.
A new turn in the battle over vaccines for cruises out of Florida. A federal judge saying Norwegian Cruise Line can now require Florida passengers to provide proof of vaccination before boarding, going directly against Governor Ron DeSantis' orders.
I think that this is a victory for the cruise industry, at least for now.
DeSantis had said cruise lines would face a $5,000 fine per passenger if they defied his order. This ruling means, for now, Norwegian would not have to pay those fines, but it's not clear what it means for other cruise lines. Norwegian, which is preparing to set sail from Florida for the first time on Sunday, says all guests and crew must be fully vaccinated at least 2 weeks prior to departure. And before boarding, the cruise line will test each passenger. Guests must bring their original vaccination documents to the port, and unvaccinated children, even those under 12, cannot board.
The cruise lines have to do whatever they can to make sure we're safe, and they can't go through another episode like they did last year when we had ships stuck out at sea with people with COVID on them.
Just days ago, with the Delta variant surging, Carnival, Princess, and Holland America announced that they are making masks mandatory for all passengers, regardless of vaccination status.
Our thanks to Joe Benitez. Next to the young teenager who struggled for years to make himself heard. His story was even cited by President Biden, and the two bonded over their mutual stuttering problem. Well, now Braden Harrington has a new book coming out.
Hi, my name is Braden Harrington, and I'm 13 years old. And without Joe Biden, I wouldn't be talking to you today. About a few months ago, I met him in New Hampshire. He told me that we were members of the same club. We stutter.
I didn't really like politics before everything started, but when I heard that he said that Joe Biden had a stutter, I kind of like wanted to try and go see what was going on. So I went to his campaign. I've had so many events that just kind of like modeled me into the person I am today.
So we noticed Braden was dealing with a speech impediment when he was, roughly when he started talking. I wanted him to see that there was an individual that became the Vice President of the United States. He has a stutter and it never stopped him.
When I got the call to speak at the DNC, I was a little shocked. I wanted to show them that like I have a stutter and I want to make a change for people who think they don't have a voice. I wanted to do something more for people, so I got in touch with HarperCollins to make a new book. There's a page that shows me crying because I was under a lot of pressure and I was really nervous because I thought I was gonna fail. And I wanted to have the chance to inspire a lot of people.
All the opportunities that have come about for Braden since meeting President Biden have been overwhelming for all of us, I think, and wonderful. The biggest thing was introducing him to more people in that community. It was amazing to see that he finally felt like he belonged somewhere.
Everybody has a different challenge. You will bump into somebody who maybe has a challenge and is maybe feeling a little down, but you can still help them out and make them feel more positive about themselves.
Congratulations, Braden. Such an inspiration to us all. And finally tonight, here is a story that many a parent can relate to. The 2-year-old who decided to run on the field during a professional soccer game and the mom forced to chase him. Will Gans brings us this story.
As any Ted Lasso fan knows, but take a look at the bottom left-hand side of your screen. That's not Danny Rojas. It's a 2-year-old superfan crashing the pitch. And that's his mom, hot on his heels. This video racking up nearly 8 million views since it was posted just 2 days ago. Morgan Tucker says her son Zadok was enjoying the FC Cincy game in Ohio against Orlando.
I mean, he was just hanging out with us, eating some popcorn, enjoying it.
Until about 70 minutes in, Zadok wasn't thrilled when gameplay switched to the far end of the field.
So he went under the gate and I was like, oh my God, I tried to grab his shirt and I missed. So then I had to hop over the gate and my instinct was just to run out there and get him.
Photojournalist Sam Green capturing Zadok's big breakaway on camera. The 2-year-old grinning ear to ear even after mom caught up with him.
He was just laughing the whole time.
What was going through your mind?
Honestly, the adrenaline was so much. I don't even remember. I had to ask my friend when I got back to the seat. I was like, did I go under the gate too? And she was like, no, you hurdled it. And I was like, oh.
Zadok and mom making it back to their seats to enjoy the rest of the game. So what's next for Zadok?
Actually, he can start playing soccer when he's 3. So we have already talked about
the only player in his league that has experience on an MLS actual field.
Oh, for sure. For sure. He is coming with talent.
Future track star there. And did you see mom end up flat on her back for just a moment? Our thanks to Will for that. That is our show for tonight. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts.